to the Survivor Savant podcast. I'm your host, Nathan Newport, the self-proclaimed Survivor Savant, and today I will be giving you guys my thoughts and reactions to episodes 4 through 6 of Survivor Borneo. Now, before we get into this, I just want to say I made a mistake in the last episode by saying that Rudy was a Navy SEAL from West Virginia, but he's actually a Navy SEAL from Virginia. I said that in the last podcast episode. I want to apologize just in case anybody thought I was getting the info wrong. So, that's my apology. But with that said, let's get into the 3 episodes that I just watched. So, starting off with episode 4, Too Little Too Late. After last episode's tribal council, which included a really heavy rainstorm, I will say, the Pagong tribe was really feeling the pressure and the raindrops coming in, and everybody was really upset about how the weather took a toll on them on that night, and especially Ramona. She was just really looking sick. But after talking to each other about it, and especially Gretchen, she was really getting tired of living in the shelter that her and her tribe, that BB, had led on, and he didn't want to have the shelter be built in the camp, he said, and instead wanted to get close to the tide, which Gretchen immediately thought was a big mistake. And so Gretchen decided she's not going to sleep up there anymore. She's going to camp in the woods. And in my personal preference, that's probably a better thing, because it's better to have your campsite away from any danger or natural threats to you, especially tides. Knowing how high the tide could rise, it's probably better to get as far away from that as possible. And as long as you find like a clearing in the jungle to where it's not infested by any bugs or any animals, or shoot, even leeches, depending on what moist it is, then it's probably better to go camp in the jungle, just as long as you don't mind the monkeys and the monitor lizards, or the snakes particularly out there. But yeah, they moved everything from their camp from the beach to the jungle. It's better change for that, all the better. And then we move over to Tagi, and we see we definitely see that Sue is definitely the female workhorse of the Tagi tribe, aside from Rudy, who's like the male workhorse. Or I wouldn't say Rudy. BB is probably a better answer for that. And then we see Sue and Kelly working together to find like tapioca, just like Pagong was trying to do in the last episode, find tapioca roots. And then while Sue and Kelly are doing that, what's Sean the doctor doing? He's building himself a bowling alley. Now, okay, don't get me wrong, I love bowling. I think it's a great thing to do with friends. And nowadays, on the new era of Survivor, that wouldn't be seen as much of a bad thing, just as long as you do still put some time to work. But if you were doing this like Sean is doing, and you're getting noticed by Sue, who thinks it's a waste of time when you should have been doing any regular work, then that's just a really big mistake right there. And in my personal preference, I mean, it's really important to get as much work done as you can without exerting any energy. But at the same time, you gotta remember that you're still out there trying to make best of what you got, and if building bowling alley is one of them, then I don't know, go for it, Sean. Do you, bro. I mean, I wouldn't mind bowling. I'm definitely a bowling fan, so I wouldn't mind going and building myself a bowling alley when I got the time. But we then start to see that Sue and Kelly have been building a really close bond with each other as far as alliances go. And Richard Richard is probably taking the time to notice that, and they started to form an alliance between Richard, Sue, and Kelly. And they include Rudy sometimes because he's not a straight guy and he's willing to be straightforward with you. And surprisingly, Kelly's okay with that, you know? Originally, when Stacy was still around, Kelly, he wasn't as much a fan of Rudy just as Stacy was. But now, since past days have gone and since Stacy's gone, I don't know, maybe there's some kind of irony to that when Stacy's gone, Kelly gets along with Rudy a lot better. I'm kidding. But no, Kelly seems to get along well with Rudy now than she did in the past. But anyway, getting to the reward challenge, we see that there's going to be like a plane flying by, and the cast has to make a distress signal trying to get the plane's attention, and if whoever's got the best signal that gets the plane attention wins the reward. Now, before the challenge officially started, one person from each tribe, in this case Jenna from Gong and Dirk from Tagi, they went over to see Jeff about the reward they're playing for. In this case, it was like blankets, pillows, hammocks, towels, toiletries, all sponsored by Target, by the way. That's your advertisement for today's podcast. You're welcome. And not only did they have that going for them, they also had the two people who got to go to see the reward also made a suggestion for what to put in the reward. Jenna suggested for Pagong a spice rack that included ginger, turmeric, garlic, cayenne pepper, all spices like that. And what did Dirk ask for a Tagi? Just a fillet knife, just so they could cut up the fish, which is probably good since they've been using that knife to cut off rats' head or using it to get the knots out of the hair, just like Sue did in the first episode. Now, we get to the challenge, the stress signal. Now, this challenge has been used, the last time it was used in Survivor Palau, and it was a fun challenge, just creative-wise, trying to get the plane's attention and trying to see if they could get their attention and in turn get a reward or immunity, if I'm being specific. Now, they did this challenge, I'd say 5 times, if that's the right number. I think it was 5 times that they did this challenge. And so, what Tagi did was they wrote in the sand, SOS, Tagi is Garagi. Now that's a clever use of rhyming there. Dr. Seuss would be proud. And not only did they do that, they also built this arrow made of foam cubes that they had along with the fish traps, and they even used themselves to get their attention by wearing raincoats, yellow raincoats, while also doing sand angels on the beach, trying to get the plane's attention. And then going over to Pagong, they made a smiley face out of all the I can't think of the word right now, but all the nature, basically the nature leftovers, I'll say this, that they use from their old shelter to make a smiley face. And of course they're waving their tribe flag, trying to get the plane's attention. And then after reviewing the signals along with the drop master and the pilot, Jeff tells us that Tagi won due to the use of their bodies, as he said, to get the plane's attention. So Tagi won the reward, everything from comforts to the fillet knife that they asked for and the spice rack that Pagong asked for. And Colleen kind of thought it was upsetting that they lost, a smiley face. You think that wouldn't get their attention? I mean, if it were survival If it was a survival scenario, though, well, it wouldn't make sense. That wouldn't, be much concern to them, because they just think you're doing something just for entertainment instead of, an actual survival situation. Which does lead into something that one of the Tagi members said as later on in a couple of episodes. I'll get to that later. And during the reward challenge, we do see Ramona on Pagong actually trying to move her weight and doing as much work as she can. It's like she got this boost of energy or something. And I thought, good for her that she's getting much better. It's great to see her getting back to it. But Jenna is starting to notice that even though she is feeling better and that she's doing a lot more in camp, she thinks that it might be a little too late, as she would say. And, well, she does comment about her work ethic improving, but her attitude wasn't much improving. And if we're talking about attitudes in that scenario, I'd say Jenna would definitely top that along with Greg. I mean, Greg out-tops Jenna by far as far as, who's got the attention that's most grabbing. Jenna's very positive. She likes to be, not to sound like a hippie, sunshine and rainbows. Even doing this cool handshake with Ramona, which I thought was fun. But if you want to get to who's the most hammiest and psychotic, Greg tops that by far. He's got this shell or coconut phone, and he's using that to he uses it to keep his sanity, basically, in some scenario. I mean, we do see this come back up again in Survivor Panama, Exile Island, where Shane's got his rock BlackBerry phone. So I don't know, maybe if I was on Survivor, maybe I might do that to keep my sanity, since sometimes, okay, let's face some people, we can't live without our phones. As much as we like to say we have to live without our phone, well, it's ruining society. Truly, we can't live without them. They've evolved since then more than just being a communication tool. They've served as not just communication, but for entertainment purposes and for business purposes. So, if you want to know my real factoid about that, it's just people use phones in their own way, whether it be entertainment, communication, or for business. How you use it's up to you. You can't let that be what defines you in your life, says the guy who's doing a podcast, which people listen to on their phones. So, whoops. With that said, we see Greg talking on his phone. He's trying to make people laugh, but Gretchen does notices that Greg is, he seems to be a very sneaky game player, or more than what people see him as. And he feels as though the more attention that he grabs, the more he'll be more liked, and the less people will see him as, a really big social game threat. As I'm seeing it now as I look back. But, we then go into the immunity challenge, and we see that it's just a jungle obstacle course / ocean obstacle course. Basically how it works is this. The challenge is called Buried Treasure, and this challenge doesn't appear until 2 episodes Thailand and, 2 seasons, not episodes. 2 seasons Thailand and Pearl Islands. It doesn't come back until those 2 seasons. But basically how it works is this. One person goes out to swim to the buoy, and then they also have to climb on top of this platform. Oh wait, before that, they go diving down to grab a message in a bottle. They then pass it off to another person who goes into a boat with another person. They row back to the beach, and once they get there, they hand off the bottle to someone, and they have to read it, because inside the bottle is a map that leads to a treasure chest. That's kind of it's almost like how the tribe finishes with. And in order to get the chest, they had to like get a key. I mean, they have to dig it, of course, but they also need a key to unlock the chest. And Dirk and Jervis go racing into the jungle. Dirk was the fastest because, well, his tribe got to the beach first. And then when Jervis was going out there, he stumbled a bit and he was kind of out of breath and taking his time, which of course led to Taki being the winning tribe on that challenge. And we now go into Tribal Council where, before Tribal Council, Pagong was talking about who would be voted off. Ramona was definitely one of them because of her work ethic, being too little too late, again, what Jenna said. And another one is Colleen, apparently, because she's being seen as someone who's very weak during that challenge, apparently during the swimming aspect, from what I've seen, but I kind of think that's kind of a load of BS in my opinion. But then we got Jenna, mostly due to her attitude and how she's very happy all the time. That seems to rub off on people a lot. And Jervis said that he would much rather deal with Colleen more than he would deal with Jenna due to her personality, I guess. But then out of nowhere, he decides to vote for Colleen. So I guess he went back on his word, I guess. But at Tribal Council, we see Jeff ask who's feeling most confident that they're not going home. Jervis sticks his hand up that he's not going home, and even though he's failed in the past 3 challenges, one was the bugging out contest where he had to eat a bug. Second was the one swimming challenge where obviously he couldn't swim, as he said. And the third was the previous challenge where he ran to the jungle, but he took his time after stumbling. And when Jeff asks, does anybody feel, though, that he might be going home, Jervis also sticks his hand up for that. That's funny. I love it. He's honest. Let's be real. He's being honest with himself. But anyway, we get into the voting. Now, the vote was 1 vote for Jenna, and then 2 votes for Colleen, and then 4 votes, and the 4th person voted out of Survivor Borneo was Ramona, which was a shame because she didn't really make much connections that she would like to in the past 2 days due to her being sick, but when she did start to feel much better and tried to get herself more into with the tribe and try to connect, she did too little too late. I have to make that quote again. Now, we get into episode 5, which was entitled The Weakest Links, I think it was. It might have been The Weakest Links. I might have to look at that again. But anyway, we get into that episode, and we see that Dirk and Sean are out there fishing again with Sean's super pole. As I'm saying this, I'm saying it in quotes. And Sue was complaining about how they've been out there for like 3 hours and they haven't caught a single thing, which leads us to believe that Sue is definitely thinking of them, Sean and Dirk, as the 2 being the weakest links. And when Sue asked, or when Sue was telling them that it was a waste of time, hey man, Dirk was like, I don't think it was a waste of time. And Sue was like, well, did you catch anything? And Dirk was like, no ma'am. And she was like, well, it was a waste of time then. Okay, let's be real. As far as fishing goes, I mean, yeah, you can put your effort into it just to help out with the tribe. But let's face it, the only person in that camp who's got fishing nailed down is Richard Hatch. Unless you're the fat had I'm sorry, I don't mean to sound insulting here. Unless you're the fat had gay person and who's going out there and and doing his thing with the fishing spear and catching stingrays and eels, which, by the way, they get an eel, they cook it, and it wasn't quite satisfying, unfortunately. It was very, it was disgusting, to put it lightly. It was disgusting. And then, as far as Sean and Dirk are concerned, I definitely see those two as people who don't quite know what they're doing, and, you know, Dirk is definitely somebody who seems to be kind of out of his element, because he's not used to being around people that he's used with. You know, he's a Christian person, and he likes to quote a lot of things from his Bible. And now, I've said this in the last podcast episode, when you're out there on Survivor, you can't bring up your religion all that much. As much as it would be comforting for me to bring it up, don't bring your connection with God and with Survivor. Otherwise, it's just going to be a mess when you're going in, and people are just going to think you're really annoying for that factor. Which, I personally, I have my reason, and it's why. Okay, let's be real. If I was on Survivor and I got to pick out my clothes, I don't know whether it be a t-shirt or like my socks, or let's hopefully not let that happen, my underwear. I would have like Bible verses. I would have like Bible verses be like transferred onto those articles of clothing, so that way I at least have like something to read from the Bible. Well, and you know, it would give me much support and comfort as I'm out there. Hopefully it would be on a t-shirt and the socks and not the underwear. I'm really hoping it doesn't come to that scenario. So yeah, as I was saying, as much as it would give me comfort to be more connected with my religion out on Survivor, religion and the game of Survivor don't mix well. So let's remember that factor. So we go into Pagong, and we see that Greg and Colleen seem to be growing really close with each other. I think I saw them make out one time in the shelter, or at least try to make out without anybody noticing. But let's face it, when you're on a show being broadcast in front of America, it's kind of hard not to notice. That also brings up another key factor into this episode, where Survivor seems to have a really interesting history as far as bringing two people together and having them form relationships after they've been on the show. Now, from what I hear, Colleen and Greg, unfortunately, I mean, why am I saying unfortunately? It's not like it's like a big deal or anything. Even though they are friends, they are not, without any messing up here, they are not dating. But no, as I was saying, Survivor's had a really interesting history of bringing people together, or to be a couple later on. Now, there have been ups and downs with that scenarios, but I'll get into that topic another time. But no, it's very interesting. And to be honest, I mean, let's face it, if I was on Survivor, my focus is totally on the game. I'm not there for love. I'm not there to like, I'm not there to, be a famous superstar on television or anything like that. I mean, if I do get fans, hey, that's awesome. More people to connect with and share a bond with over. But I'm mostly focused on the game itself. And yes, I absolutely love to go on an adventure or to Fiji one of these days. But if I'm out there and if a person just so happens to have a crush on me, as much as I would like that to happen for myself, seeing how I'm still single, I'm not going to let that affect my game. I'm absolutely 100% there to play the game and try to somehow win the $1 million for myself. But that's another topic that doesn't need to be further I mean, I think it needs to be further like talked about as far as how people should go into the game thinking, whether they are trying to focus themselves on the game, or if they're focusing themselves on the adventure, or they're just focused on trying to make a lot of new people, trying to meet new people out there on the island that they wouldn't necessarily get to meet in real life. But now, going back into the episode, we go into the reward challenge, which involves using a slingshot, a blow dart gun, and a spear or javelin. Now the reward is not just the fruit that they hit, but it's also for a box with very special meat. And by special meat, I mean live chickens. 3 live chickens. So this challenge particularly, with the certain tools that they use, like the blow dart gun on the spear and the slingshot, this challenge doesn't come back for a while. Not until, like, ironically, Survivor Fiji, which they currently film at nowadays. In Survivor Fiji, however, instead of using a slingshot, they instead use a bow and arrow, and that's kind of cool that they reuse challenges. And instead of hitting like fruits, they instead use the regular target bullseyes like they would use for simple archery. But no, after the 3 rounds, where in the blow dart round, Sean from Tagi and Jenna from Pagong, they went head to head together, and I think it was Jenna who got the most points, or maybe it was Sean. Dang, I was too enthralled with trying to focus on what's going on that I almost missed out on who I thought won that. But I think it was Jenna who won that. And then we go into the slingshot round, where Richard is like an expert marksman when it comes to using a slingshot. And the other person was Gretchen on Pagong. And I think Richard was successful in using the the slingshot. And then we go into the final round where they had to use a spear. Sue from Taki was the one who got to use the spear. And she was so dead set on trying to, like, she was telling us about if Pagong used a guy to, like, throw a spear here, she was like, I want to humiliate a guy on national television that could throw a spear better than him. And I'm like, okay, alright, you do you. But it turns out that might have backfired on her, unfortunately, where even though she had very good success, Joel was the one who got to win for Pagong, and they won the chickens. And oh my goodness, they named their chickens breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Now, I'm sorry for the vegetarians who are listening to this. I mean, I don't know if you are a vegetarian or not, but, you know, it's not unusual that some people who have, like, cows or chickens, that they name them after, like breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I remember when I was younger, we had chickens in our backyard. I think we called one of our chickens, like, fried or crispy. And I think one of them was barbecue. And now, as I'm talking about this, I'm going back to this funny video that my friend Smiley, he showed me, where this guy was recording a baby cow, and the cow was looking at him, and oh my goodness, he was singing, "Baby steak doo 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 doo, baby steak doo doo doo." Oh my gosh. Oh. It's so messed up, but at the same time, it's so funny. Hey, let me be real. When I see a funny video, I laugh. I can't help but laugh. If it was like a try not to laugh challenge, I would probably he failed miserably at that. And probably, I mean, I try my best, but when I see something absolutely funny, I just go chuckling and go laughing. Alright, so we go into back to Tagi's camp, where we see I was talking about earlier how Richard caught an eel with the spear and they were eating that, and we noticed that I talked about how Sean and Dirk were like the weakest on the team, and we also noticed that Dirk, he's been losing a lot of weight. Like, he hasn't been eating a lot out of the other tribe mates. I mean, maybe it's because of like religion matters. I don't know. Like if he was trying to like do some fasting and he was trying to get closer to God, I understand. But dude, you're out there for like 39 days. You at least gotta try to get some strength where you can. Like, I even saw him as they were like offering him some like rice and eel, that he wasn't really much in the mood to eat it. So it's interesting you can see that aspect. But then we go into the immunity challenge. Now for this immunity challenge, one person has to like row a boat out there in the ocean, and they have to row it around their tribe colored buoy. I don't know why I almost said boogie. And they have to pick up their fellow tribe mates as they're like wearing life jackets, and they're out there in the ocean trying to get saved. Now, this is interesting because Kelly from Tagi, she is a river rafting guide, so she's used to doing this kind of like work in her everyday life. Like, this is what she does. So she was picked for this. And then for Pagong, they chose Jervis, the guy who can't swim. They chose him to row the boat for Pagong and try to get him back to the finish. Now you're thinking when you're watching this, Kelly's got a shot at this. There's no way she's gonna get beaten. And I honestly thought, I mean, back then when I was first watching this season, and it would totally make sense for Kelly to win this challenge. She's had experience doing this kind of thing, but it doesn't seem to go her way when we see that Jervis and Pagong were the ones who win the challenge, and Tagi, unfortunately, he go to Tribal Council again. But before we get back to the Tagi camp, we see Kelly sitting there looking disappointed with Sue trying to comfort her, and then Kelly said this, and I quote without cursing: "I got beaten by a guy who can't even effing swim." I mean, that is kind of like hard to like deal with. I mean, knowing that you're such an expert with what you're doing, like, you've done this for ever since you started this job, so you know that this would be something that you're familiar with and where you're comfortable with. But knowing that you got beaten by someone else who doesn't seem to know what they're doing and somehow be able to take them down when it gets to the end, it's kind of heartbreaking. And it also, going to the other spectrum of it, it's also kind of like uplifting, because Jervis, he was having a hard time with the challenges. He wanted to, like, he even said it himself, he wanted the spotlight. And, he's had screw ups in the past few challenges, and this was definitely a challenge where he had a little bit of redemption in some sort of way. Not really, though. I mean, yes, he got redemption. Forget what I just said. He absolutely got redemption. And then, now that I realize this is kind of like an element that they do bring back in Survivor David vs. Goliath, where you have the overachieving people versus the underdogs. And, in that scenario, Kelly would kind of be seen as the Goliath, where this is her field, this is what she's comfortable with. There's no way somebody who can't swim can't be here. in that scenario, Jervis is like a David, an underdog, where he was chosen to lead, to row the boat out and save his trimates. And that scenario, like it always says in the Bible, David won. And David got to celebrate with his team. So this does bring back an element that Jeff mentions in David vs. Goliath. It's not a question of who has the advantage. It's the matter of what is the advantage and how you use it. And I think that also kind of serves as a factor when I watched this challenge. Now we go back to Toggy, and unfortunately they have to vote someone out. Now, Dirk was a name that was on top of people's minds due to him not eating all that much and being one of the weakest. And then Dirk and Sean were talking about how they were thinking about voting out Sue because she was being a little bit bossy, just like how BB was at his camp before he got voted out. And not gonna lie, if I was dealing with somebody like that too, I would kind of be agitated. But you know, you gotta work with the people who you gotta work with, just like Sue is with the current trimates that he has going on at her camp. And then we get into the votes, and we see Jeff read the votes, and the vote turns out to be 2 votes for Sue by Sean and Dirk, and 4 votes have already unanimously apart. That I almost said, I can't even say it. 5th person voted out Survivor Borneo was Dirk Bean, the religious dairy farmer from Wisconsin. And seeing Dirk leave and talk about how he was grateful to be on this adventure, it kind of lifted me a bit, because, you know, I would feel the same way too, about feeling thankful that I would get to have this experience of going on this show that I've loved watching, you know, ever since I first watched it when I was a kid. And knowing that I had the opportunity to go out there and do it, I would definitely feel grateful for it too. Even if the result wouldn't be how I would like it, I would have still been happy no matter what. And Dirk was, I have to point this out too, Dirk was very confident that he was going to come back, because he still sees that he sees himself as somebody who was trying to work hard. I mean, he was trying to fish, he was trying to find tapioca in another scene. But even though he's trying to do all that, it was another situation where it was too little too late in that regards. But he assumed that he was still needed for challenges, but apparently not. Oh wait, now that I think about it, I think it was Sean who also voted for Rudy. He didn't vote for Sue. Sean voted for Rudy, and Dirk voted for Sue, and the rest of them all voted for Dirk. Now that I think about it, Sean was telling about us about how later down the line there's going to be really physical competitions, and that he's worried that Rudy wasn't going to be all that much of an asset, which is why he voted for him, which would make sense in regards to being the oldest person out there. But that wasn't how it turned out, and Rudy stays longer. Okay, we're now moving on to the 6th episode, Utter Revenge. Oh boy, this is gonna be fun to talk about. So we see that on Pagong that, you know, they're doing the things where they're going to the mud volcano and they're covering themselves in mud. And all the while over at Tagi, they're talking about how close the merge is, and that after the 6 persons voted out that they would be at the merge. And they start to question whether or not that they were Taki starts to question whether or not Pagong was serious about the game, and that they're mostly there being the 90210 of Survivor, which, I'm not gonna lie, I would definitely label a group of people who were acting like that if they were being the 90210 on Survivor. But that's a villain thing to do, and I don't want to try to be a villain, but if that were the case, that would be my honest opinion about it. And you know, Kelly, Sue, and Richard are definitely seeing themselves as more serious game player types, while the rest over at Pagong are just there to have fun. Like, they're more focused on vacation and not really worried about anything else. And then we go back to Pagong, where they got the feast on one of their chickens. Now, Colleen was not so great about wanting to kill a chicken, and then she does eat meat, by the way. She's not a vegetarian, and she doesn't like to kill a chicken, and she would be a vegetarian if that were the case, but no, she does eat the chicken, and it was a chicken who kept pecking at them alive, which Jenna was happy about, that they killed that chicken, and justice was served, she said. Now, I would be excited that I would get to have some kind of like meat sustenance out there on the island, but I'm gonna be real with you. I am a person who doesn't like to kill animals either. I don't want to be that person. You know, I would eat meat, but I don't want to kill an animal just to get the meat. But if I were to come to that decision where I would be in that scenario, I absolutely would have to like go hunt or kill something just to get meat. To my own bitter judgment, as I would say. You gotta live out there. In order to die, you have to kill animals in order to gain sustenance. Granted, there are substitutions like fish and crabs, but you know, they just wanted the chicken. Now we get into the reward challenge. Now this reward challenge is interesting because it takes place at this like village where it was around World War II that soldiers grouped at that village for like refuge. Was that? Yeah, World War II. It was at World War II where village soldiers would group at that village for refuge. Now, for this challenge, the tribes would have to go into the village to collect 3 items each for their tribe: an army helmet, a pocket knife, and a can opener. Whoever comes back here with the first 3 items wins the reward. Now, there is a rule where if you bring back a duplicate item, like a pocket knife, for example, well, when you already got a pocket knife, then immediately that item goes over to the other tribe and, you know, they get it. It's a kind of like a weird rule, but anyway, the reward, canned goods, and what looked like to be like military style meals where it's like, I don't remember the proper name usage for it, but I'll just say ready-made meals just to like think quick. But also a really big bar of chocolate. Good lord, as soon as I saw that chocolate, I just want to like take it for myself and just gobble it all down as much as it would hurt my teeth. And that's also something fun to bring up. Chocolate is the 1/2 of other items that Survivor contestants, when they're out there in the jungle, that they would crave for the most. The 2 items people crave for the most when you're on Survivor: chocolate and peanut butter. Those are the 2 biggest items people would crave for out there on Survivor. But anyway, we get into the challenge, and when it gets down to it where both teams have 2 items, Richard Fertaghi, he finds an item what he thought was a can opener, which was the last thing that they needed. It turns out it was a pocket knife, which was Pagong's pocket knife. So because they were already up by 2 and having that pocket knife go over to them, Pagong got to win the reward, the canned goods and everything, and they also got the big bar of chocolate, which I wanted to have so bad. Oh, by the way, in the tree mail, they got this like can of dog food with the the note that they learned for the challenge. And I'm not gonna lie to you, I don't care how much money you would offer me or how many times you would dare me, I'm still gonna say no to eating dog food. I do not want that to be me. Oh my goodness. So just so you guys know. Now I'm going to the reward challenge. Oh wait, I gotta talk about something else. I'll save it for the last part. Now we go into the immunity challenge, and the tribes were greeted by 2 green berets. Now this is kind of special for Rudy, seeing how he was in the Navy, but I mean it's the Army, nonetheless. They do this challenge on Sandspit, where it's this like big obstacle course, and they race through it, and they have to get to the end and with their tribe flag, and whoever wins gets immunity, which is out on Snake Island, surrounded by snakes. And in the end, it was Tagi who was the one who nailed it, and they got to win immunity. And when Pagan gets back from the challenge, the rest of their chickens got eaten by our monitor lizard, and that's unfortunate. Very unfortunate that their food's protein was eaten by a lizard. Hey, you gotta be careful where you leave stuff out, otherwise animals are gonna get into it. Now, we get into tribal council, and something that was interesting and had to be mentioned up was the fact that Jervis brought up a comment how women are the most stupidest thing, the second most stupidest thing in the world next to cows. And the moment I heard that, I was like, oh, cringing so bad. It's like, but he realizes that and he apologizes for it. But the person who gets the most slack for it was Joel, who was seen as somebody who seems a bit sexist because he was, and I use the term loosely here, mansplaining on what to do with bamboo cutting and cutting coconuts and doing other things with cooking. And I noticed one of the women going, dude, if you want to tell me how to do something, do it yourself. And, you know, that would be kind of irritating to deal with. And Joel does say that he is not sexist at all. He absolutely believes in women can do anything man can do, and I certainly believe that philosophy as well. I absolutely think that is true. And I'm sorry, I'm trying to think of my words here. Now going to tribal council, Gretchen was talking about how next thing they do when they go to tribal council, when they're writing their name down, they take the voting booth note and they stick it to the camera and they go, moo. That's funny. Just to like put it in their face. And then we get to the vote, and there were 2 votes against Jenna by Joel and Jervis, and then 4 votes ended up putting this guy out. The 6th person to be voted out of Survivor Borneo was Joel, due to his sexist, I say this in commas, sexist comments, and due to him possibly being a threat and the challenges going to the merge is another reason why they would vote him out. Now, I almost lost my train of thought. Okay, now, we are getting to the end here, and this would be the part of the podcast episode where I would get a question from somebody and I would answer it, kind of challenging me on how much I know about Survivor. Now, if you guys want to send me a question, you can DM me at Survivor Savant Podcast on my Instagram page, but you can also DM me on my personal Instagram account at Mr. Nathan Newport. That's a space, by the way, between Nathan and Newport on Instagram. So, the question I got was from Russell Muscle TV. Shout out to you, Russell. Oh, I love your content. The question was, who were the first 10 first boots on Survivor? Now, spoilers ahead for anybody who hasn't seen Survivor, but knowing who's listening, you've probably seen it already. So the first 10 boots, the first 10 first boots. Sonia, Survivor Borneo. Deb, Survivor Australia. Diane, Survivor Africa. Peter from Survivor Marquesas. John from Survivor Thailand. Ryan from Survivor Amazon. Nicole from Survivor Pearl Islands. Tina from Survivor All Stars. And Brooke from Survivor Vanuatu. And then 10 is Jolanda from Survivor Palau. Now technically though, if you want to think technically though, the first person officially to be eliminated was technically Jonathan. However, if we were actually going in game terms, the first person voted out is definitely a Jolanda. So thank you, Russell, for sending me that question. I appreciate it. Again, if you guys want to send me questions that I could try to maybe quiz on my Survivor podcast, yes, you can send them to me at the Instagram pages at Survivor Savant or at Mr. Nathan Newport. But not less, thank you guys so much for listening to this with me. I'm so glad I get to continue to do this. Hopefully next time I can do something different with this podcast. Maybe have a co-host in the future. You never know. Like I said, I mean, this isn't Big Brother or anything, but expect the unexpected. But with that said, thank you guys for listening to me. Until then, my name's Nathan Newport. Thank you guys for outclassing, outsmarting, and dang, I almost forgot. My goodness. It's my own podcast. I'm getting how to sign out on my own podcast. What the heck? But in the meantime, my name is Nathan Newport, and thank you guys for outsmarting, outclassing, and outspeaking with the Survivor Savant podcast. Thank you guys for listening. I'm signing out.